we need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
Kamala Harris just delivered an economic speech in Pittsburg today, and it was nothing short of a disaster. She claims she wants American families to get ahead, but there's one problem. She's the one that made them fall behind. So in this video, we're going to react to this speech and talk about it. Let's start here.
So let's start then with the first pillar of an opportunity economy, which is lowering costs. So I made that our top priority for obvious reasons, because if we want the middle class to be the growth engine of our economy, we need to restore basic economic security for middle class families. To that end, the most practical thing we can do right now is to cut taxes for middle class families and individuals.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that she's missing in that statement. Okay, what are the exact tax cuts, and how is that different than the current one that was implemented by former President Trump? Because we know he gave the biggest tax cuts in a very long time, from top all the way to the bottom. So, you know, what is the true difference? Now, we do know that she wants to raise taxes on corporate businesses, right? But what we don't know is, when you say you're going to give tax cuts to the middle class, what are you talking about? Because they already have one. And this leads me to the second thing I always think about whenever she starts rambling on about tax cuts, is that taxes in America is not really an issue right now. Like, that's not at the top of the list. At the top of the list is the cost of living. So it's not that we need to lower taxes, because technically they are significantly lower than when former President Obama was in office. And what I'm saying is that when rent is high, electricity is high, gas is high, groceries are high, then that obviously increases the cost of everything, which is why we call it inflation. That is the problem, not actual tax cuts.
On Trump's watch, offshoring went up and manufacturing jobs went down across our country and across our economy. All told, almost 200,000 manufacturing jobs were lost during his presidency, starting before the pandemic hit, making Trump one of the biggest losers.
Yeah, obviously, we know this is a lie. And what I love about doing this video today is we have the receipts. Let's take a look. Now, there's multiple places to get this information, but I like this website, which is fred.stlouisfed.org, and because it gives us more detailed information. But the bottom line is this, okay? Since the year 2000, manufacturing jobs have gone out the window. That's the bottom line, okay? Bottom line. So George Bush, you get an F on that, right? Now, let's go back to President Obama, right, which took office January 2009. And so that was during the recession that hit, right, the economic crisis that took place. So clearly jobs were lost. And they hit a bottom line point at March 2010, 11,453. And then from that point on, they start to increase. And when Trump gets into office, January 2017, 12,380, and he continues to increase manufacturing jobs. So when she says, oh, he's lost more jobs since President Hoover, okay, I mean, it'd probably be better if we go back on this graph and say, no, Bush lost more jobs than Hoover did, but whatever. Now, what she's probably trying to sell to people is this idea that even though COVID was the worst thing that had happened to America in a long time, and clearly everything was shut down, that counts as a loss, right? And that's what you see here on the graph. But then when we start opening up, the jobs bounce back, right? And so the bottom line is she's a liar. Okay. Donald Trump did not lose manufacturing jobs. George Bush did that. Okay. And you can give credit to President Obama and you can give credit to Donald Trump if we're being fair and impartial to adding manufacturing jobs. Okay. This is what the graph is telling us. She's a liar.
I want Americans and families to be able to not just get by, but be able to get ahead. To thrive. Be able to thrive. I don't want you to have to worry about making your monthly rent if your car breaks down.
You know, when you're talking about vibes, she gives off socialism vibes because the government will pay for it all. We want you to depend on the government. That is the story of the Democratic Party, by the way. Okay? A big event happened in the 1960s. The birth of the welfare state. That's what they want. Why? Because it gives them a license to print money. That's what happens. So I don't buy this one bit that she wants families to get ahead when she's the main reason why they are behind. She did cast a tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. It caused a high record of inflation. That's not me lying. That's what the numbers show. You don't see that during Donald Trump's presidency 4 years ago. So that's why she loses every time where they try to attack Trump on policy. It just doesn't click. It just doesn't make sense because even a voter who is uneducated, doesn't know anything about policy, but has only experienced the results of the economy can say definitively the economy was better when Trump was the president versus Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket science to know that. And even when you hear some of these political commentators or pundits or strategists that go onto the news, some of them admit it without wanting to, right? They hate that they have to admit that the last 3.5 years has been shit, especially for the middle class, because it's an indictment on her record. And for the life of me, we still don't understand why she won't separate herself from Joe Biden, because it doesn't do her any favors, especially when he goes on to The View and he makes this comment.
And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
So what you're saying is you delegated your job to her. So she was involved in policy decisions. Because for a second there, I thought, oh, well, she's just the vice president. I mean, why are we putting all this responsibility on her? Well, the commander in chief just came out and said, I gave her that responsibility, right? So when we talk about foreign policy, she fails because the Afghanistan withdrawal was a debacle. Service members were killed when it could have been avoided. 2, Hamas and Israel, they've been dragging their feet since October 7th. Ukraine and Russia. Russia would have never provoked Ukraine, but they know that Biden and Kamala Harris, they're weak. So in my book, that's an F. Economy, all prices are high. That's an F. Immigration, record levels of people crossing the border illegally. That's an F. So how could Joe Biden and Kamala Harris celebrate what they've done over the past 3.5 years? It blows my mind. And I don't understand why they don't show more empathy about how much has damaged Americans over the past few years. They just seem to have this attitude of gaslighting, and it's very subtle. Well, we have record low inflation, and we have more work to do. That's not what people want to hear. They want to hear, hey, we know the economy has been terrible to you. And this is why it was terrible, COVID or whatever. And here's what we're going to do about it. That's not what comes out of her mouth. And that's a big problem for her, which is what Scott Jennings on CNN highlighted. Watch this.
Look, she's got a major problem. It's Joe Biden and the fact that she's his vice president. In our CNN survey yesterday, 51% of registered voters said that Trump had a successful presidency. Only 37% said the same about Biden and Harris. A lot of that has to do with the economy, and it mostly has to do with inflation. And so she's yet to look into a television camera and say, here are 2 or 3 things that Joe Biden did that I disagreed with, and I would do it differently, and I've learned from that. She's effectively running on a continuation of the same. people don't like the same and they remember Trump better. I don't know how you expect to win under those circumstances.
I don't either. And I don't think she will, unless there's something that's going to happen that we can't see today. But if we're looking at recorded history, she should lose this election. And the numbers show that. The polling shows that. Last 3.5 years show that. So that obviously remains to be seen. But that is a big problem. Remember, Joe Biden's approval rating is in the dump. It's terrible. It's just downright terrible. So it doesn't make sense for her to not separate herself from Joe Biden. It's crazy that she hasn't done it. But it speaks to, in my opinion, the position that she's in because she was thrown in there. She was given this nomination. She didn't go out there and earn it. Because Joe Biden endorsed her, he put her in a tough position. He endorsed her to become the first woman president of the United States. She's not going to throw him under the bus. But from a political standpoint, she should.
All right, so Donald Trump personally not very beloved, right? This is something we've heard from a lot of his supporters that maybe they don't love him personally, but they like the job that he did as president. So we talk about popularity. We're often talking about favorability ratings, but how about approval ratings? How about approval ratings thinking that he did a good job in his presidency?
I think people confuse that often.
I think people confuse it very often. Look at this. Think his presidency was a success. Donald Trump, 51%, the majority think his presidency was a success, despite his personal popularity being meh. Look at this for Joe Biden, way down at 37%. I think that this is a real drag on Kamala Harris, despite her own personal popularity, while Donald Trump, with thinking his presidency is a success, I think the net favorability ratings don't actually get into the fact that there are a lot of folks who like the job he did as president, but don't necessarily like him personally.
Okay, Joe Biden no longer on the ballot, but what does history show about his unpopularity and the impact it can have?
Exactly. So take a look here. There's only 3 examples going back. The successor was the successor of the same party when the net approval rating was negative at this point in the cycle, right? As Joe Biden was.
So maybe I misstated. Not popularity, approval.
Approval.
Okay.
So here we go. George W. Bush, obviously Republican, didn't succeed him. Lyndon Johnson, there was no Democrat who succeeded him. Harry Truman, no Democrat who succeeded him. Now we're looking at Joe Biden. Could a Democrat succeed him despite his net approval rating being as low as it is? History isn't so kind, but again, we're really just looking at a sample size of 3. But the bottom line is, I think we can say Joe Biden is a drag on Kamala Harris, despite her own popularity, at least measured through net favorability.
Yeah, it's just confirming what I had said, which is she needs to separate herself from Joe Biden. Everybody's been saying that. She won't do it. For legitimate reasons. He did endorse her when probably most of the Democratic Party would have never endorsed her. Let's be honest here. There was definitely better, stronger candidates ahead of her, but we are where we are. And so Donald Trump is looking great. It's his election to lose. Now, one might ask, how is it that people now like Kamala Harris? Well, because they hate Donald Trump. And she has the power of the corporate media behind her, programming people to like her. But the one thing that the corporate media cannot control is when she gets on stage and she goes off script and she does what she's always done. Word salad.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
All right, listen. Public speaking is hard for a majority of Americans, no question, just people in the world. But then when you have a script that you can read from and you still find a way to commit a word salad, I don't understand that. That's what drives me crazy about her is you're reading from a teleprompter, lady. How could you still do that? I could tell you why she still does it. It's because that's who she is. That's the problem with her campaign is they're trying to turn her into someone that she's not. She's a dangerous, far left socialist, really, from San Francisco. She does not fall far from the tree of Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Tim Walz. These people are radical. Okay, so two things for you, right? The broader picture of her message today, it's got some holes in it. And what do I mean by that? That Joe Biden's approval ratings are low and he's a drag on her campaign. And she refuses to separate herself from Joe Biden. And that's why he might also be the reason why she got all this attention, but he also might be the reason she loses. Because if I'm an undecided voter, I'm very clear on one thing. The last 3.5 years has been crap. And when Donald Trump was the president, that didn't exist. And this leads me to my final point. Speeches like this isn't going to cut it. Not for undecided voters. Not for people in the Rust Belt area in these battleground states. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for someone who understands that they're in trouble or they are experiencing pain because of the economy and they plan to do something about it. Now, everybody knows in the back of their mind, there's only one candidate that has done that, and that's Donald Trump. The only thing that they have against Donald Trump is they hate him because they've been programmed to. So, yeah, you're going to have some voters who are going to vote against what they complain about. I mean, I find that to be interesting. You know, I'm complaining all day long that gas and groceries are high, but I'm going to go vote for Kamala Harris. Make that make sense. Right? And if you think we're having problems now, what makes you think we're not going to have more problems if she gets into office? Because if she's this terrible when it comes to campaigning, if she's this terrible when it comes to doing small little softball interviews, do we honestly believe she's going to be able to govern and make hard decisions? That she's going to be able to put the right people in her cabinet? I don't think so. This is an election that now I'm seeing is based on two central principles. One is personality versus policy. The second one is populism versus the establishment, which is why you have people on both sides against Donald Trump, because he's not one of them. And at the very least, if he wins, part of the reason is because we'd rather someone go to Washington, disrupt and blow up the damn thing than to continue to allow people like Kamala Harris to lie to us, sell us out, and ruin this great country. So that's my opinion. What do you guys think about her economic speech? I thought it was a disaster. Again, even though she had a script to read from, she still went off script. She committed a few word salads, which is ridiculous. She gave empty promises, which were ridiculous. She made statements that really don't make any sense because she's been the vice president over the last 3.5 years. What do you guys think about all that? And then the bombshell from Joe Biden today admitting that he delegated responsibility to her, foreign and domestic. So let me know in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel, make sure to go to the link in the description. Grab yourself a t-shirt, buy us a cup of coffee. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.